This Friday, Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan are back to switch things up in Disney's Freakier Friday.
Totally. Yes.
It's an absolute riot.
Woo!
And the only movie that can be described as
So much weirder than the last time.
What last time?
it's the frequel
You ready?
we've been waiting for.
That absolutely slays.
What deeply out of touch old person came up with that?
You did.
Wow.
Don't miss the comedy event of the summer for all ages. Disney's Freakier Friday in theaters this Friday. Get tickets now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 131, Criminal Mischief Case Updates. So on this week's episode, we're going to go over some major developments in a few of the cases that we've been following, starting with the Karen Reed trial. But before we get to that, let's do a quick recap of the case. What everyone seems to agree on is that Boston police officer John O'Keefe was an amazing person and just an all-around stand-up guy in his professional and personal life. Case in point, tragically, his beloved sister died of cancer 5 months after receiving this horrific diagnosis. Then 2 months after she passed away, her husband died from a heart attack, leaving their children, who were 3 and 6 years old, parentless. At the time, John was a bachelor and didn't have any kids of his own, and he stepped up to raise these children. So in January 2022, John had been dating Karen Reed for a couple of years, and the relationship, like many, had its ups and downs. And on January 28th, it started out pretty down. John and Karen had gotten into an argument that morning, and during the day they would exchange text messages and phone calls, continuing this conversation about the state of their relationship. But by the end of the day, they'd worked it out enough for them to make plans to meet up at a bar with some friends, which is exactly what they did. So it was early in the morning, after a night of bar hopping, that Karen Reed drives her SUV with John O'Keefe to an after party at the home of a fellow Boston police officer. Here's my co-host, Brandon Morgan, and I discussing the case from episode 88 of our bonus content. This was back in June of last year.
There were all of these conditions on why things weren't working out, but then they wind up together that night anyway, you know. And so there they are.
By choice. They both wanted it. They both wanted it.
Absolutely. So they hang out. Then they agree to bar hop, right? They go to another place. That place is closing down. Mm-hmm. And so then they just want to keep the party going. So there's an after party at another cop's house, right? So this is where we'll go. And that's where the stories diverge, right? She claims she saw him go into the house. They claim he never came into the house. What everyone agrees on is that he was under a fucking foot of snow, dead the next morning. Mm-hmm. And no one knows how to get him.
It was absolutely, I mean, it's like, I'd heard of the case, but I was like, how does someone end up dead and dying of frostbite in front of somebody's house? And what? Like, it didn't really, it's just a really bizarre set of circumstances, you know, and then all this corruption on top of it.
Prosecutors allege that Karen Reed was drunk when she drove her and John O'Keefe to that after party at the officer's home, and that along the way, she and John had been fighting, and that when he got out of the SUV, Karen, in a fit of rage, intentionally struck John outside of the home of this fellow officer and then took off, leaving him to die outside in the snow. But Karen's defense team argued that when Karen Reed and John O'Keefe arrived at the after-party house, they weren't fighting at all. John got out first, and Karen waited in the SUV because the house looked buttoned up, like nothing was happening inside. So John got out first just to make sure the party was still going on, but that when he didn't come back outside, she got annoyed with him. And then when he didn't answer her calls, she eventually took off. But at no point did she ever hit him with her vehicle. The defense's theory was that John O'Keefe didn't answer Karen's calls when he went inside because he was being beaten and attacked by the family's dog, and that after Karen left, then at some point, he was dragged out into the snow, where he was left to die. The defense also alleged that Karen was a convenient scapegoat, framed in a police cover-up involving the homeowners, law enforcement, and other guests at the after-party. So Karen was charged with second-degree murder, vehicular manslaughter while under the influence, and leaving the scene of a fatal collision. Karen Reed maintained her innocence every step of the way. Her widely publicized trial lasted 9 weeks and ended in a hung jury last July. But the jury wasn't hung on the second-degree murder charge. In fact, according to some jurors who spoke to the press, they all came to an agreement that they didn't believe she was guilty of second-degree murder, that the jury had been deadlocked on the vehicular manslaughter charge. So when the Commonwealth of Massachusetts included second-degree murder in her retrial, Karen's defense argued that that should be taken off the table because it was a violation of the double jeopardy law. Karen Reed's defense team is still trying to get that second-degree murder charge dropped by the Supreme Court. Meantime, last week, the retrial of Karen Reed began. The jury was seated with 18 jurors, 12 regular and 6 alternates, 9 men and 9 women. This time around, there's more security at the second trial. Karen Reed has a lot of supporters who are very vocal, and that support hasn't waned. If anything, it's grown stronger. So Karen Reed didn't testify in her first trial, and she lawyered up immediately and was never interrogated by investigators. So the first jury never got to hear Karen Reed personally. But one thing that's different this time around is that the prosecution is playing snippets from interviews that Karen gave to the media after the first trial, which included a new documentary that's been released. When Karen was asked about these media clips being played in the courtroom, this is what she had to say.
Come at me.
Does what your dad?
I sound like your dad. I may have seen it. I would not have said anything that I wouldn't say again.
The prosecution's selection of interview clips from Karen's media interviews includes how much alcohol she consumed the night of John's death.
I felt fine. I felt like I was buzzed. And then there was one drink, the last one that was given to me, which I would have counted as 3, but they're counting as my 6th cocktail. The guys that we were with brought around shots, and they gave me one that I didn't drink, but I poured it in my drink. So that's now my 5th and 6th drinks, with the 7th, which is a shot that all the men did, and I poured it. So that one glass that I'm holding, that I go into the waterfall with, has 3 drinks in it, a vodka tonic and 2 shots. And which is why John said to me, you're not leaving that drink here, like you haven't touched it and just poured a bunch of onions, like just take it with you, which was something he always did. So then I go into waterfall, and I put that drink down and I socialize most of the time. So that would have been my 5th, 6th, and 7th drinks. Then John orders me a drink at the waterfall that I don't drink, that he takes with him. And then there was a round of shots that Chris Howard bought that I did take. So that would have been the night. But I did not consume 9 vodka martinis or take 9 shots, depending on how you count it. And the last 2 drinks I didn't touch. I mean, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking. I mean, I had drank, so, and that led me to question, like, could I have hit him? Did I far over his foot or hit him in the knee? Did I incapacitate him? I mean, I always drive with my music blasting ever since I was 16, and I know when John got out of the car to go into Fairview, I know my car was blasting because when I got in it the next morning to go look for him, I had to immediately turn it down. And I don't know, it's stormy. I have had a few cocktails. I didn't black out, but I wasn't as lucid as I would have been if I had gone to bed at 9 and drank a tea. But so I was fuzzier than I would have been if I had no alcohol.
Another interview clip shown to the jury so far was of Karen appearing to mock John's mother, her indifference to John's mother's pain at losing another child. Remember, she'd already lost a daughter to cancer and a son-in-law to a heart attack before John's death.
And his mother leans over the kitchen island and says to me, I think it looks like he got hit by a car. It looks like he got hit by a car.
Is that John's mom didn't testify at the first trial, but Peggy O'Keefe would testify at Karen's retrial, and it was powerful.
My daughter Kristen had a tumor, a cancerous tumor that she had for 5 months. And she died in November of 13. She had 2 children. And then 2 months after she passed, her husband passed from a heart attack. And then you all know about John. And then my son Paul is there.
Another question mark in this trial is whether disgraced Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator in the case, who has since been fired after he was forced to read the derogatory text messages he sent about Karen Reed to his friends as he was investigating her during her first trial.
And then you write nutbag, as Chief would say, correct?
Correct.
Who's Chief?
A friend of mine.
And then you write what?
She's got a leaky balloon knot.
Trooper Proctor, explain to the jurors what a balloon knot is.
Your, essentially, I guess, your rectum area.
Your anus?
Yes.
That's what you were referring to about Miss Reed?
Yes.
And you were making fun of her because you believed at that time that it leaked? That's how you were treating Miss Reed? Yes or no?
Yes.
And then you followed that up just to make sure you cleared up any mistake about what you meant with leaks poo, correct?
Objection.
All right, so I'm going to strike that. You could get this in, but do it the right way, Mr. Jackson.
You followed that up with the phrase leaks poo, didn't you?
I did.
Again, another reference to Miss Reed's medical issues and medical conditions, correct?
Correct.
Specifically focused on her anus, correct?
In reference, yes.
And how could we forget defense attorney Alan Jackson making him read some of these text messages in front of the jury?
And he writes, she hot at least, correct?
Yes.
And what was your response to that?
From all accounts, he didn't do a thing wrong. She's a whack job cunt.
From all accounts, he didn't do a thing wrong. She's a whack job cunt. That's what you wrote, correct?
Correct.
16 hours into this investigation.
Yes.
Into your objective and unbiased, thorough investigation, correct?
Correct.
But sir, you didn't have all accounts, did you?
What I meant by that was...
Did you or did you not have all accounts in your investigation?
The accounts we had was Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle, discovered taillight pieces at the scene. Those are the accounts we had.
The accounts you had... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The accounts you had, Trooper Proctor, were from 2 people named McCabe and 1 named Albert, who happened to be the homeowner and a Boston cop. Those are the accounts from percipient witnesses that you had, correct?
There was another additional witness that we had investigators had interviewed, Miss Roberts as well.
And from all accounts, he didn't do a thing wrong. That was your decision 16 hours into the investigation, correct?
Yes.
And the other decision that you made and the other determination you came to was my client, Karen Reed, was a whack job cunt. Right?
Yes.
And here's the thing. If the prosecution doesn't call him to the stand, you can bet that defense will. So at this point, it's still unclear if Karen Reed will take the stand. And when asked outside the courtroom, she said, to be determined. We will definitely keep you posted as the trial continues. And in Arizona, there is another conviction in the tragic Mommy Doomsday case. In 2023, an Idaho jury convicted Lori Vallow Daybell of murdering 2 of her children, 7-year-old JJ and 16-year-old Tylee. Lori would also be convicted of conspiring to murder her then-boyfriend Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy Daybell. Lori received life sentences for the murders. And Chad Daybell, Lori's 5th husband, was also convicted of the murders of Tylee, JJ, and his wife Tammy in June of 2024. He was sentenced to death in Idaho. However, recently, Lori went on trial in Arizona for the 2019 murder of her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. She pleaded not guilty. But let's do a quick recap. So the morning of July 11th, 2019, Lori's 4th husband, Charles Vallow, went to pick up their son, JJ, at his estranged wife's home, where he was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. At the time, both Alex and Lori claimed that the shooting was in self-defense. Alex wasn't on trial because he had already died, just months after he'd shot and killed Charles. However, at the trial, prosecutors alleged that Lori conspired to murder Charles to cash in on his $1 million life insurance policy. And it also meant that she would be free to marry her lover, Chad Daybell, a self-proclaimed doomsday prophet and author. It was also believed that both Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow Daybell murdered her children and their spouses because they believed they were carrying out a religious mission, and therefore the murders were righteous. During her trial, Lori decided to represent herself, and she claimed that her brother Alex had shot Charles in self-defense, that Charles had died as a result of a family tragedy, not a crime.
The state did not show you evidence of an agreement to commit murder. They showed you evidence of a family tragedy, and then they showed you the sad effects of a family torn apart because of that tragedy.
But this story didn't match up with police body cam footage. If it was self-defense, why were 2 shots fired by Alex Cox? The second shot happened when Charles was already on the ground and not a threat, as they claimed. The jury also heard Lori's phone call to the insurance company trying to collect on his life insurance policy.
Claims Department, this is Robin. May I have the policy number? Sure. It is... Are you calling in reference to a death claim? Yes. Okay, one moment, please. May I have the name of the insured? L. Charles Vallow. And who am I speaking with? This is Lori Vallow. And your relationship to the insured? He's my husband. Okay, ma'am, I'm just going to need to ask you a few questions so that I can open the claim, and then I can go over the claim procedure with you. And what was the date of Mr. Vallow's passing? July 11th. And what was the cause of his passing? Well, he was shot. Okay, so I don't know how I want to put that. Okay, all right. And I hate to ask, but is it? Yeah, you can just say yes or no. Was it a homicide? No, it was an accident. An accident. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
At the time, she had no idea that Charles, sometime before his murder, had already called to change the beneficiary on his policy.
And I need to know what to do right now today to change my beneficiary account, but it's fraud.
I'll be able to do that, but you can request that request in writing.
My wife left me 30 days ago. She's taken a ton of my money out of what she's doing on this account, but it's fraud. I'm the guy. I'm Charles Vallow. I'm the insured and the owner of the policy, correct? And I need to know what to do right now today to change my beneficiary to my sister.
Lori was furious after she found out that Charles had changed the beneficiary to his sister. Prosecutor Trina Kay.
7 days after this defendant and her co-conspirator Alex Cox shot and killed Charles, this defendant texted her soon-to-be next husband, Chad Daybell, about Charles's life insurance policy. Her words tell us that she was involved in this killing. Her actions and her words of texting Chad Daybell tell us the motives behind this murder: Chad and money. The morning of that 18th of July, Lori Vallow texted Chad and said, quote, "I just got the letter from the insurance company saying that I am not the beneficiary. It's a spear through my heart. Who do you think he changed it to?" Later that day, after she spoke with the life insurance company, he sent Chad another text, quote, "So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. Probably it was Ned before we got rid of him." Lori Vallow's words 7 days after Charles was shot and killed tells us that we was her and Alex killing Charles. Why? For that money.
The Ned you heard Prosecutor Kay referring to is the name of the zombie that Lori and Chad referred to, who they believed had taken over Charles. In fact, here's body cam footage of Charles before his death, trying to explain to police how his wife believed he'd been possessed by a zombie.
She's not here. She lost her reality. We've been at a great marriage. All of a sudden, the last month, it just blew up. I will kill you because you're not Charles, and nobody will care.
Okay, so she at this point doesn't think you are her husband?
She thinks I'm Mick Schneider.
Who's Mick Schneider?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's the name she used. I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
I'm just like, I'm as bewildered as you are.
The jury also heard body cam footage capturing Lori's demeanor after her husband had just been shot and killed by her brother.
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors don't know us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi, neighbor, sorry.
Lori didn't call any witnesses or submit any evidence in her defense. She also didn't testify. Here's prosecutor Trina Kay.
Lori Vallow wanted the $1 million, and she wanted Chad Daybell. And she and Alex used that twisted religious beliefs they had so that they could kill the evil, possessed Charles.
Jurors deliberated for 3 hours before finding her guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. But she's not done yet. In fact, before she can even be sentenced for Charles' murder, she is set to go on trial in early June on a charge of conspiring to murder Brandon Boudreaux, the ex-husband of her niece. For our next case update, we head to Long Island and the latest in the Long Island serial killer investigation. So, Rex Heuermann was arrested for the murders of the so-called Gilgo Beach Four: Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. These young women were escorts who disappeared between 2007 and 2010. Their bodies were found in December 2010 along a stretch of Gilgo Beach in Long Island. Each were bound with belts or tape and wrapped in burlap. Later, Heuermann would be charged with the murders of Jessica Taylor, Sandra Castillo, and Valerie Mack. Rex Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to the 7 murders that he's been charged with so far. At least 10 bodies were discovered at Gilgo Beach, including the unidentified remains of a mother and child, known only as Peaches and Baby Doe. But last week, after nearly 28 years, the Nassau County Police released the identities of Peaches and Baby Doe. The mother was identified as Tanya Denise Jackson, a 26-year-old Army veteran, and her 2-year-old daughter, Tatiana Marie. The identifications were a long time coming. Back in 1997, Tanya Jackson's torso was recovered first at Hempstead Lake State Park, and she was called Peaches because of a tattoo on her chest. Her skull was discovered 20 miles away near Jones Beach. In 2011, more of Tanya's remains were found along with the skeletal remains of her daughter, Tatiana, near Gilgo Beach on Long Island. The long-awaited identification was made through investigative genetic genealogy in 2024, but their identities was only recently announced last week. Here's Detective Captain Stephen Fitzpatrick at a press conference.
Though Tanya and Tatiana have commonly been linked to the Gilgo Beach serial killings because of the timing and locations of their recovered remains, we are not discounting the possibility that their cases are unrelated.
At this point, investigators don't have a direct connection between Tanya, her daughter, and Rex Heuermann. Nassau County District Attorney Ann Donnelly.
Knowing the identities of the mom and the little baby is just a first step.
There is a $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Heuermann is being held at the Suffolk County Jail in Riverhead, New York. A trial date has not yet been set. And finally, our last update is on the Bryan Kohberger trial. You may recall back in March, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I discussed a move by the defense. They were trying to get the death penalty off the table for their client after he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. The defense argued that Kohberger's ASD should exempt him from the death penalty because of reduced culpability and the risk of a wrongful conviction based on bias, say if Kohberger didn't act the way the jury felt he should act. And in this way, he couldn't get a fair trial.
But what I want to talk more about are the incels in the incel community. because this guy was throwing some aspersions around that was just burying this guy. Okay, when he said, "Why do you think he's an incel?" and he said, "Look at him." Like,
I know
whoa.
that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's what the jury is going to. It's a confirmation bias.
But as far as ASD equating Kohberger with an intellectual disability, ergo reduced culpability, the judge disagreed. At this time, the judge also ruled that the bulk of the 911 calls that morning after the murders would also be allowed to be shared with the jury, which included text messages between the two surviving roommates. Prior to Brian Kohberger's arrest, he was a PhD student in criminology. He faces 4 counts of first-degree murder and felony burglary in the stabbing deaths of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Goncalves, and Madison Mogen. His trial is scheduled for August 2025 and is expected to last several months. Up next, criminal mischief bonus content. Here, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I will discuss these cases in more detail. And trust me, there's a lot to talk about. And hey, everyone, don't forget that Criminal Mischief is now available for your listening and viewing pleasure on YouTube. So check us out. And as always, thanks for listening. From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production, recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself, music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Osorio, your writer and host.